Well, I'm Tim Ireland, and my wife Laura Ann Ireland. Shall we go down to the youngest now? Our youngest member of the family is Puma the dog, also known as Bubba's, as Samuel would call him. And speaking of Samuel, this is Samuel Ireland, and Kelsey Ireland, and Rebecca Ireland. Well, I would say our journey into openness probably even started with our first adoption. Looking back, it was a closed adoption through a doctor in those years, not a formal agency. And we received this little gift who was just the joy of our lives. And I think we wanted to express our gratitude, both to the birth mother and to the Lord. Just we were full of joy, and so we wrote a dear birth mother letter, as it were. We wrote a letter, and it was really, my intent was just to bless this woman, thinking that maybe 20 years down the road, 25, we might meet her someday, and that she would know how much she means to us. And so that was our first entry into openness. We would write a letter, and then we followed up, right? Mm-hmm. We followed up with
that first letter, and then a Christmas letter, and then that's how the tradition started. We just would do a Christmas letter, birthday letter, Christmas letter, birthday letter, with pictures that never included anybody but Rebecca.
Yes.
And never any identifying background whatsoever.
We were very careful with the photography. We wanted to make sure she couldn't spot where we lived.
And I remember trying to pen that letter, wanting, "Dear birth mother." Oh, that sounds too formal. "Dear birth mom." And just feeling how awkward at the time it was to write that.
And then through associations with Hope Services, our second little girl came along, and it was more open. This time they selected us, and so they had a voice in that, and they got to choose from profiles, and we were selected. And I think the next level, we continued on the same, but we actually spoke with them on the phone, maybe 6 months after Kelsey was here. And that was a big shock for us. And so gradually we were getting used to this concept of openness. And I think that's what it is. Life is a process, and this certainly was a process. And so after the phone call, I don't think there was any other verbal contact. Mm-mm. We just continued the same pattern. Birthday letters and pictures and
artwork that the girls did. Yeah, little notes. The girls weren't until they were older that they actually started writing their birth moms.
And then our unexpected blessing was Samuel. And so this raised the bar of openness. And so this is now some years later, and the girls were 6 and 8 perhaps, around those ages when Samuel came along. And it was the situation where the birth mother was well into her pregnancy and was getting desperate to find just the right birth parents through a long circumstance, a long series of events. And so we met her face to face while Samuel was in utero. So that was a new experience. And then to top it all off, so this was the peak of an openness experience. We actually were at the hospital with our 2 daughters, and she presented Samuel to us. And you can imagine the experience that was, the bonding experience. I still have pictures of our girls with tears in their eyes, and it was quite gripping. And so it certainly cemented our relationship with the birth mother, for sure.
And the feelings of intense joy knowing that you have this new life, this gift that she's given you, and yet feeling intense guilt and grief for her, knowing we were leaving with her baby and she was getting left behind empty-handed. And just, I was so surprised at those emotions that I felt. It was like there were 2 of me there.
We knew, of course, we know that it's difficult for a birth mother to relinquish her child. And we knew that, but to be there and to see it, it had more of an impact. And it was so awkward trying to leave the room. You didn't want to leave for her sake, but you want to leave with this new baby. So it's the emotions were running, certainly.
And then to a few months later, when we actually did get together, and this was part of that Vina asked for, was to be able to see Sam before he turned a year, and then just to see her intense joy at being able to hold him. And I can still see this picture that we took of her holding him up like this when he was so little. It was very precious, very, very precious. And so our openness journey really sprung from there, because we had thought, well, we'll just have one visit at the year. Oh, but we squeezed one in prior to he was a year old. And then after that year birthday, because that was in January, it seemed like only natural to do it in August and to have a summer picnic. And so really, nothing was written in stone. But as we saw Vina's joy and her delight in seeing Sam, as we walked and went day by day, month by month, and she didn't call, she didn't phone Hope, what's my child, what shape is he in, all this kind of thing. We knew she was trusting us, and that in turn made us comfortable. That in turn felt, oh, she's trusting us and we can trust her. And we sent letters and we sent pictures, this time with identifying information. We weren't so worried about what the backgrounds were. And slowly, for us, it was the boundaries that we had put around as time went on, just slowly were being expanded, were being broadened and widened. And for the longest time, she did not have our phone number. She didn't know exactly where we lived, because that's what we had wanted, and she was comfortable with that. And so any contact that we had was always via Hope. And then as time again went on, it was, oh, well, let's just exchange phone numbers. And eventually it was an actual visit to our home and a visit to her home. But all that's over the course of many, many years for us. And it was really our comfort level, wasn't it?
Gradually increased, and then the fairness principle kicked in. Because now you have one birth relationship opening up, and we're seeing the benefits of that, and the others were more closed. So one by one, we met with each birth mother. We met Marcy for the first time, Laura and I, and the same with Tracy. And then we had meetings with the children with us. So first, just the child alone, wasn't that it? Or maybe all the children were together. I can't quite recall. But we just gradually opened it up that way, and so now the openness has reached the point where the three birth mothers are very good friends. They go out shopping for the children's Christmas gifts. They're kind of like the Ireland support group. They all know each other well, and we get together for birthdays and Christmas celebrations, and so it's grown gradually. Now you couldn't, I could not imagine that, by writing the first letter.
No.
It's just the way it unfolded. It would have been far too intimidating to say, well, you're going to adopt these children and you're going to have all the birth mothers over to your home. Well, the children are still children. And so it's been a great story.